everyone. Welcome to the 302nd episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have a lot of news for you today. We're going to be talking about an acquisition, new branding, severe lack of privacy on COVID-19 contact tracing data. We've got a warning from the FBI. We've got new modems for your IoT devices. And we have a cluster of new gadgets that are probably going to launch in the next week ahead of CES from Google, Tile, maybe Amazon, and Kevin's going to tell us what he'd like to see at CES. I'm going to co-sign most of that. And I have a Ring mailbox sensor review for y'all. Plus, we're going to hear from our sponsor, Calix, not once, but twice this episode. And our guest is Paul Williams, who is at GE Lighting, a Savant company. And we're going to be hearing about what the heck Savant is doing with GE Lighting. All of this, plus more, awaits you. But first, let's hear from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Calix, and later in the show, I'm going to speak with Pam Ferguson from Calix. For the past few months, I've been using their Blast Wi-Fi 6 systems in my house. And just to shift things around a little, she's going to ask me questions about my experience, and I'll tell you how they eliminated the dead spot I had in my home office. So stay tuned for that discussion later in the show. Alrighty, I do love testing Wi-Fi gear, and this actually was really good gear, so you'll learn more. All right, Kevin, let's talk about news. Allegion, which makes the Schlage brand of locks, they acquired a technology company called Unomi, and y'all are probably familiar with Unomi because it was actually, I'll say, co-headquartered in Austin. It was also, Allegion had invested in Unomi. Unomi does two things that y'all might be aware of. One, this is what you're probably going to be aware of. They make a free software that will integrate lots of your devices together. And it works really well. It's actually a good alternative that I suggested when IFT started asking people to pay for their service. And Unomi lets you do a lot of things. Plus, I've always liked that they will automatically detect what's on your network. And then they'll say, hey, I see you have these two things. Here's a really good routine. And you're like, oh, thank you.
That's handy.
It is handy. Like for the longest time, when I was running Unomi, anytime my phone rang, my Sonos would lower the volume automatically. And it took me forever to figure out why that was happening, but it was because Unomi. And I had agreed to it at some point in time, but I play with so many things that it's ridiculous. So I was like, what is going on here? It's convenient, but weird. This could be the smart home of the future. Convenient, but why is it doing that? Okay. The other thing that Unomi is less well known for is they provide a device integration cloud. And they call it their thin cloud. Schlage has been using it for years. Their devices are built on it. There are other companies that use it. And it's a serverless platform. It's relatively inexpensive. And lots of companies, they make it very easy for devices to integrate, which is why they have their consumer-facing software to show all that off.
So I wonder then, will that consumer software continue? Because I know some people still use Unomi, and for good reason.
It will. So that's that. I'm glad you asked that, Kevin, because the answer is yes. I talked to Kent Dixon and Vince Wenos, who is the CTO at Allegion, and I learned a little bit more about the deal. So your consumer-facing software, if you are using it, is going to stick around. So yay. They're not really marketing it, but I recommend if you want to play around with a bunch of device integrations, it's free. It's easy. Check it out. And then Schlage is going to build out their residential stuff that we all know and love is already built out on Unomi's cloud. They're going to push forward with building out their commercial solutions there as well. And then what's going to happen is it's going to become this division of Schlage that offers basically an IoT device integration platform for them. So everything's going to continue on. They're just going to continue together. So that's that news. I'm going to very quickly talk about news that also happened this week. And that was news from GE Lighting, which was acquired by Savant in midsummer. They came out and explained what the heck Savant is doing with GE Lighting. And it basically boils down to a new brand, a new app, and, well, don't say thank goodness just yet. New brand, new app, and upcoming devices. We're going to talk way more about this with our guest this week, who is Paul Williams from GE Lighting. So we're not going to talk too much about this now, except to say that the new brand, it's not C by GE anymore. It is now Cync by GE, and Cync is spelled with a C, and I hate it.
So they kept the C, got rid of the by GE, and Cync makes sense. I like that a lot better than C space by space GE.
Okay, Kevin likes it. I have a visceral reaction to spelling Cync with the C that I should be over by now as a tech reporter, but I'm just not. All right, let's move on to news that makes me sad, but is not surprising. Kevin?
Oh, it's sad, and I'm actually, I'm not surprised either. This is the ultimate bait and switch. We've talked about all these different ways to integrate contact tracing for COVID-19, whether it's through Bluetooth or some other sensors or wearable devices and so on and so forth. And everybody's big concern, rightfully, was privacy. Well, everybody practically in the world has promised it's only going to be used for contact tracing. And that's what was promised to the population of Singapore. Unfortunately, Singapore government has now changed its stance and is allowing, under the country's criminal procedure code, it's allowing the police force in Singapore to obtain any data from the contact tracing app and token for basically criminal investigation.
Because contact tracing, the privacy protocols have you being a number, right? So you can see someone's number hung out with someone else's number, or...
Well, that's if they use the same approach that we have here in the United States. Yes.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
They use something called Trace Together, and I don't know enough about how they've implemented that. They originally said it was what you've described, and everything was not going to be stored in a centralized database, was going to be decentralized and encrypted. Well, if that's the case, then how is the data going to be gotten by the police? Obviously, something's not right there.
Do they require people to download it? Because that's one of the things as we talk about IoT and as we add these products into our lives, I'm rethinking I'm rethinking the relationship I have, because it is a relationship. So I'm thinking about things like, hey, I downloaded the Washington State Notify app, but if I saw something like this come out, I would be the first person on the block to undownload it. Not that I plan on criminal activity, but in protest, as it were. So I feel like when someone changes the rules on you, you should be able to. Well,
let me answer the very beginning of that, and see how you feel. There are 2.4 million downloads, roughly 40% of the population in Singapore that has this. And part of the reason it has grown so much in adoption is because the government said that the app or the token would be mandatory for entry into public venues early this year.
Grrr.
Yep.
Yeah, that's coercion. I don't like it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm worried we'll see something like that with not contact tracing here, but definitely other things like vaccine certificates. Maybe you're not allowed someplace to get on a plane, for example. And
right.
That might be private businesses. Anyway, the point is, this is going to be a really interesting test for how we view both the agreements we make with companies about our privacy, and two, I'm going to say why we need a decentralized internet. Anyway, okay. In other bad news, the FBI, this is about a little over a week ago, issued a warning that hackers it's more than mischievous. They were using people's connected smart home devices, like their connected cameras and security systems, to call police, and then they would watch the shenanigans over the hacked system. So basically, hackers would get into your system to swat you. And swatting is it's a terrible thing. It's probably 10 years old. I feel like it started, I don't know, with the gamers. And what they would do is they'd call police to an address and tell them something was happening and try to get them to send a SWAT team to bust in, and hilarity ensued. I
mean, I don't know that I have any smart home devices currently set up to contact emergency services upon my behalf. So if you do, this is something to be aware of. I mean, I think the likelihood of it happening is pretty low, but it all comes back to maintaining
two-factor.
Yeah, exactly.
And password hygiene. Those two things will help you always in life, even though two-factor is not convenient. I know. But I mean, neither is getting swatted at 3 a.m. and
I probably now have 15 services set up with two-factor. Yes, it is not inconvenient. I understand that more than anybody right now because every 5 minutes I feel like I'm generating a token, but I feel more comfortable.
15, that is a lot. So what token generator are you using?
I am using Authy. I've heard very good things about the Microsoft Authenticator. Previously, I've used Google Authenticator, but it's not as seamless when using multiple devices, such as multiple phones and computers and such. But Authy does background sync, so I have my tokens everywhere.
I also use Authy. I have used Google Authenticator, but I stopped that the first time I had to swap over phones. They fixed the problem where you had to re-photograph all your keys, but yeah. Only once. Once was enough for me to be like, nope, not doing that again.
Same here.
Okay, let's talk about modems.
Yay.
All right, y'all may not be excited about modems, but this is basically how your device talks to the internet. So get excited because Sequence, which makes modems, they have a new platform called Calliope 2, and this is an LTE Cat 1 modem. And the reason we're talking about this is because they've done two things that are relevant here. They have reduced the battery consumption, so power consumption, and reduced the cost. So now you can get an LTE Cat 1 modem for basically the power consumption and cost of an LTE M modem. And if you're like, Cat 1 M, what? Basically, here's the deal. Cat 1 has a couple things M doesn't. It has a bit more bandwidth, and it also allows you to do voice, so voice over LTE. And that's why you would use it, to be able to use that voice capability, or you need a little bit more data. So I just want to let y'all know that's out there because modems are important, y'all.
They are. They are.
Without them, you get nowhere. And now, let's talk about the really exciting stuff. Devices! There's some new speculation out there about new devices, including a new Google Interactive device, Kevin?
Yes. Earlier this week, found on the FCC site, we see that the FCC has tested a Google quote-unquote interactive device, and we don't know anything about it other than what we can elaborate on from the radios that were tested. So this has Wi-Fi up to 802.11n. It also has Bluetooth LE, support for Thread, and Project Soli. So maybe some gestures. Put all that together, and I would imagine or hope that it's either a smart home hub or a new smart display. Don't know. Maybe we'll find out at CES next week.
Yeah, or maybe it's something cool like a light switch that you can like fling your hand at and go. No.
Why do you need 802.11n on a light switch?
Why not?
I guess. Okay. Well, the other interesting thing I noticed that people did not report on, the testing said the device actually works with companion devices. Now, I don't know what those are. So they tested with those companion devices as well. So those could be sensors. They could be cameras. They could be anything. I don't know.
Ooh, it could be an interactive thermostat.
Oh, I hope not.
Oh, no, I don't think so. But, well, think about what if you could get companion devices that are like sensors that would actually integrate in with Google Home? I mean, that's like my nirvana right there.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's not my nirvana, but it's high up on my wish list as long as they improve their routines.
Right.
I am excited about Soli. I think there's a lot of opportunity there with gesture interfaces. Ooh, and we're going to talk about that. So we'll pause that for a moment.
Well, since we mentioned Project Soli, we might as well talk about ultra-wideband technology that is expected to be in the newest tile trackers. This is TechCrunch reporting earlier this week. Instead of using Bluetooth like the current tile trackers, using ultra-wideband will allow the tiles to be found in a wider range. They will also, according to the report, link the Tile app through AR so that you can actually see, since ultra wideband can help with precise location, you can actually see where your tile is in AR. That is pretty cool. Like if something's under the couch, it will like show you that when you're using your phone to look at the couch. The downside is you've got to have a phone with ultra wideband, and there aren't too many other than the iPhones right now.
Right. And Apple's ultra-wideband technology is proprietary to Apple.
Their U1 chip, yes.
Yeah, it's their U1 chip. The software and the modulation scheme is only for that stuff, which,
shocking.
Y'all, grr. I mean, imagine how nice it would be if we all could have like a UWB. It'd be like NFC, but UWB that you could tie into so many other things, and we could have real presence detection and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I live in a bubble. I live in a fairy tale land where technology could be useful for everyone instead of a way to lock people into walled gardens. Okay. I'm done. Also, in the, you want to call it radar world, also in cool wireless technology, Amazon is allegedly developing a radar-equipped sleep apnea tracker. And this would be some sort of Madam A powered device that can track people for sleep apnea. And it's designed to sit near your bedside table. It's going to use millimeter wave, which is what Solar uses, to sense your breathing. And then it'll use AI to be like, oh, are you snoring? Are you freaking out and not breathing? I think it's more than just snoring, obviously.
I know, but I can't make an apnea sound.
I feel like it's gasping, but yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Oh gosh, that was horrifying, Kevin. Okay. Anyway, so this is all theoretical. Maybe we'll see it in September when Amazon does its big device launch, and maybe we won't. I will say all of these three news elements are really exciting to me because they give you really fine-tuned, obviously, gesture detection, fine-tuned location, and all of these things are really important for the smart home. So that ties now into CES, which feels a little late this year. It's also virtual. And what we'd like to see at CES.
Yeah. So I have a list of 6 things, although I kind of stole one of your ideas here. So you could sort of say this is our list. But I put
about 15% of it is our list.
It's okay. This way, if I'm wrong, you can share the blame. I'll just cover the 6 real quick because I have a post on Stacy on IoT in detail on each of these. One, I won't even cover that much because it's the same thing I've been saying since 2019. More quote unquote smarts in the smart home. I mean, we just talk about AI and ML and everything's supposed to be getting smarter, but really the smart home is still not that much smarter. It's not learning our individual habits, our needs, our preferences, and really adapting to us without asking us or waiting to be asked. And that bothers me. But
so can I know you're in the middle of your 6, but I want to dig into this because I've been thinking a lot about this. And Amazon actually has 2 technologies that I think will address this. And they're pushing more, which is hunches.
Hunches, yes.
Which is where if you turn that on, Madam A will every now and then wake up and say something like, hey, looks like you're going to bed and I see your front door is unlocked. You usually lock it. Do you want me to lock it? And you're like, thanks, Amazon.
I agree. That's a good first step.
And then 2, I feel like they said this would happen in one of their device launches, but we didn't really pay attention to it, but I tried it out the other day and it works. You can actually tell Madam A a limited number of commands like, Madam A, create dinner time lighting. And she will say, I don't know what that is. Or what is that? And you will say, set, in my house, it's living room table to 30%. And then she'll say, got it. Setting this to that, or creating a routine, or creating, what did I call it? Dinner time lighting? Dinner time lighting routine. And then it happens. And now I have basically vocally trained Madam A in what I want, which you can't do it for very many things, but it's really exciting. Okay.
It's a
sorry.
Start. Anything that can make the experience easier for the consumer, I am all for. It's a great start.
We talked about this a while back in the energy conserving aspect of hunches that Amazon apparently announced and none of us paid any attention to. That's actually going to come hopefully later this month. So stay tuned. Okay, back to your list.
All right. And this is the one I stole from you, and that is no more apps. I mean, it's to the point now where there's an app for every device or brand. And yes, we kind of just catalog them all away and probably use what I'll call a meta app or an interface like the Madam A app or Apple Home or Google Home. But it's friction, to have to go through, download this app. So, and then maybe configure something, maybe set up your automations and that instead of your main interface. It's just a pain in the neck. We have way too many of them. And my thought is, if a device truly works with an ecosystem, and I'm saying that in quotes, just let it work natively without requiring some dedicated app. I can see why you might need the app. There could be some exceptions, such as like a firmware upgrade or a subscription service feature, but there doesn't need to be an app for everything to really make this a compelling, easy experience.
I agree. And yes, please, I'm over the apps.
Okay.
All right.
Me too. Something else, and we've harped on this for the past couple of years, and now is the time for change. Better device support for mesh networks. And when we first started seeing like video doorbells and other cameras and sensors and things that were hard to connect to a mesh network because the mesh network bonds essentially the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz frequency into one massive network. And these devices were using lower cost 2.4 gigahertz only chips. It was okay. It was frustrating. We've had people call in about this, but mesh was just getting started. We've had mesh networks for a couple of years now, so there's no need for this anymore. So either on the router side, there has to be controls to allow simpler 2.4 gigahertz device setup, or these devices just need to have both bands in them, quite honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the device, it's so slow, right? Because like mesh networks 4 or 5 years ago kind of came onto the scene. We started seeing a problem. 2 to 3 years to get chips to deal with this. And then, I mean, some of it's software, but if you had to do chips, then yeah, they should be there by now. You're right, Kevin.
I want to see that this year. Something else I want to see, and we just alluded to it in talking about the Google interactive device, I want to see some new interface options. There are times when voice is ideal, a screen is ideal. There are times when those are not. And that gets us back to the apps, going to find an app or whatever, or using your voice when everybody's sleeping and you don't want to disturb them. It's just not ideal. So I'd like to see more gestures, and it sounds like that's what we may see with this new device. I'd also like to see, and I know this is a stretch, I really like to see like a standard of gestures so that if I'm using a device on one platform, say maybe a thermostat, and I want to turn the heat up, that same gesture is used on the other platforms as well for those thermostats, if this all goes. I know that's a pipe dream, but I'd really like to see that.
I mean, it's like swiping on the phone. We need a gesture ontology.
Yes.
I agree with you. All right. And then, oh, it's my favorite topic.
It is Project Chip, which we talked about, I believe, last week. The draft spec is now available for Project Chip members, so you and I and other mere mortals cannot see the spec.
Send us your specs. Call me. Call me.
So I would like to hear at CES from the device makers, the partners in the Project Chip effort. I want to hear I don't need to hear like low-level details of things, but I do want to know, how is your device going to be better for me with Project Chip? What benefits am I going to get? Can I switch between digital assistants with no loss of functionality? How will my devices be more secure? Because security is also a big part of this. So I'd like to hear that, and I don't want to wait anymore. We've been waiting a year, essentially.
Yeah, we're so impatient. All right. And then finally, something we've been waiting, oh man, so much more than a year for. Yes.
Well, you have a LoRaWAN router at your home. You have a Helium Hotspot.
Well, wait, you should tell people what you want first.
I was getting there.
Oh, okay.
I want to see more LoRaWAN devices for consumers. And my example is your Helium Hotspot. You're providing a service by allowing LoRaWAN devices within, I don't know, a mile or two, or who knows how long, onto the internet. Basically sensor data from far away getting onto the internet thanks to you with your hotspot. But you really don't have or can't easily get any devices that can use the LoRaWAN network yourself, say for tracking location of something, or a mailbox sensor, as I know you're about to talk about. I know that Amazon is really pushing Sidewalk as, I'll call it
I do have a tracker. Helium, they commissioned and resold a tracker. So I have a tracker that sits in my husband's car. So I know where he is at all times.
So, okay, so they have that, but like you can't go into, say, a Best Buy or some other place where you would buy devices.
No, I have to buy it from them. And the software experience is awful. There's no great GUI.
It's not a mainstream end user product. I think it's probably more of a concept device to show off what this can do.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to see more devices with good user interfaces that customers can use for LoRaWAN. And again, I know Amazon is pushing Sidewalk Labs, and I'll call it their flavor of LoRaWAN. I don't want to see everything tied to one company. But if you want to use Amazon and you're going to use Sidewalk and you're happy, that's fine. I want something a little more open. So I want to see devices that are non-Sidewalk available.
I would like that too. I would like it to be open. Again, hey, me and my open networks. Okay, so you want to talk about the Ring sensor?
I want you to talk about it because you have it.
I do. I have it. I set it up about 2 weeks ago. So the Ring mailbox sensor is not on the Amazon Sidewalk network yet. Sometime next year, well, actually it's this year. This is such a weird time of year. Sometime this year, the mailbox sensor will work on Sidewalk. So that's great. But right now, Amazon says the mailbox sensor can connect from hundreds of feet away as long as you have the bridge. And Amazon sells the Ring bridge with the sensor for about $50. Or if you have the bridge because you have other Rings like lighting products or something else, you can just buy the sensor itself for $29.99.
Can I ask a question about that? Because they're selling a bridge. Is that a stopgap until the Echo devices are Sidewalk bridges?
I have asked Amazon this question. I am waiting for an answer.
Okay. Just because I would be not happy if I had to pay $50 for something that will essentially not be needed later this year.
As a package deal, well, one, if you don't have any of the Amazon Sidewalk-enabled devices, you'll still need it. And two, correct, you buy the package. Within the package, it's $20.
Oh, okay.
So it's not exorbitant. I mean, it is $20. And if you want to wait, you can. Some things to note. The sensor itself is just a plain old PIR sensor. It looks exactly like the SmartThings motion sensors from 2013. So ancient technology. And the idea is you stick the sensor in the mailbox and all it does is detect motion. So if someone opens the mailbox to put the mail in, you get a notification. If someone opens the mailbox to take the letter out, you get a notification. Very easy. And a couple things to note. One, there is an external antenna. If you have a metal mailbox, you can't stick a sensor and a radio in there because it won't go anywhere because a metal mailbox is like a Faraday cage. So you will need a hole in your mailbox to run an antenna through and stick the antenna on the outside of your mailbox. That's exactly what I did. Super easy. My mailbox had a hole. If it didn't, you'd need to take a cordless drill out there and right through it. Or you could just say, no, too much work. I don't care that much. Okay. So distance. My mailbox, I live on a narrow acre, and my mailbox is about 240 feet away from where I had the bridge, and it did not work. So I had to move the bridge out to my garage. Now it's on a diagonal. It's about 15 feet closer, and now I get a poor or a fair connection, and it does work. So
you can always move the mailbox.
I cannot move my mailbox. I need the post person to be able to drive by it and be able to put the mail in. But I will say, my husband thinks this thing is great. And he's constantly walking by, like, is the mail here yet? And basically every day at like between 11:10 and 11:30, I get a notification. And I'm like, oh, the mail has arrived. And now that I know that, I'm just kind of like, wow, is this all there is? And yes, it is all there is. I wanted to set up a notification so it could say things like, Madam A could like alert me, your mail has arrived, or you've got mail. You can't do that yet. You could using something like Home Assistant, but you can't in Madam A. And I mean, I don't know, y'all. This is something y'all really want. I have an individual mailbox. I don't know how well it would work in like a mailbox that is part of like a community mail setup where you have to walk farther.
That's what we have. Yeah. And I'll be honest, considering most of the people here are original owners from 20 years ago, the mailman showing up is a big deal. So I would like to try it because it would be used here in this community. I can tell you that for a fact.
Yeah. So I know this is a problem a lot of y'all have. I feel like some of y'all have it and you are going to live too far. When Sidewalk is enabled, it will work up to half a mile away, which is a lot farther.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's going to take away the range problem because of the different network being used.
But if you're in maybe my post person is just really on time all the time, but I'm just like, all right, now I know that the postal person comes around 11:15 or so. I don't feel like I need this sensor. So that's just me. All right. That is a lot about a mailbox sensor. That concludes the news portion of the show, but now it is time for the Internet of Things podcast hotline. It's where we answer your questions about IoT and the smart home. You can give us a call at 512-623-7424, and during January, you will be entered to win a smart speaker. Any one of the $99 smart speakers, your choice. And because it is the first show of the month, we have the December winner. Our December winner is Blake. We got a ton of calls during December. Y'all had questions, and hopefully we're providing answers. So let's go to this week's question, which is from Jamie.
Hi, this is Jamie from Petersburg, Virginia. And as a listener who's old enough to remember when user interfaces were 80 columns wide, I'm looking for a sensor that will detect when somebody has fallen. I'd like it to work with either a Google Hub, an Android phone, or the Home Assistant server I'm working on. Unfortunately, the internet is teeming with advertisements and 10 best sites that are mostly geared toward making a quick buck off of elderly people. So, is there a health band, smartwatch with fall detection built in, a camera with artificial intelligence to recognize a fall, or a device that analyzes Wi-Fi wave reflections that can detect a fall? Can't wait to hear what you have to say. Bye-bye.
Oh, Jamie, this is actually something I looked for probably 5 years ago because I had this whole fainting problem. It was very inconvenient and scared the heck out of my family members. So back then there weren't a lot of options. Now there are a few, but they have their pros and cons. So let's talk about the first one. This is one I've been excited about for a while. It's made by a company called Vayar. Vayyar. It is a Israeli chip company that built devices to show off their ability to use wireless signals to monitor motion. So this is not a camera. This is it's ultra wideband actually, using wireless to create an outline of a body and what it's doing. And they created a product called Wallabot Home. And this is a $259 product that sticks on a wall. They recommend a bathroom. You would need multiple of these to cover all the rooms in your house. But basically, if you fall, it detects it and it will send an emergency alert. So this is exactly what you're looking for, except it does not integrate with Google or Amazon, although I'm not sure what you want that to do. Kevin has another option.
Right. And again, I don't know that this is ideal for you either, but there are smartwatches that do have fall detection. I completely understand what you're saying about basically crappy overpriced devices that claim to do the same thing. But one that will do it and do it well is the Apple Watch. And at this point, you can get one, the Apple Watch SE. It's an entry-level watch, but it's a good one, and it's $279. So it's an option. The downside is you do need an iPhone to use an Apple Watch, unfortunately. If that's an option for you, the nice thing is if it does detect a fall, it can contact emergency services for you. You can cancel that call if you're okay, but it will do it automatically if you haven't moved for a minute after a fall detection. And it will also send messages to specific contacts that you designate. So something to consider.
Yay. And I just want to throw out, this is not going to give you any wireless fall detection. I'll just put that right here. But Amazon did launch something called Care Hub, and that is where you can tie your Amazon Echo devices to someone else's Amazon Echo devices. And you can actually, when you do that, you can designate that person as an emergency contact. So if you fall and are conscious, you can actually ask Madam A to call that person. And again, not exactly what you're asking for, but that is relatively inexpensive if you have an Amazon Echo device in your home and you have a friend, a family member, someone who has an Amazon Echo device in their home. Okay. I feel like, Jamie, We haven't given you exactly what you need. We're not sure exactly what you need is out there, but hopefully one of these things helps, or maybe someone will hear this and say, Stacy, you forgot this amazingly cheap device that Jamie could use right away. And then we'll tell you.
Or maybe at CES next week we'll see something.
Maybe we'll see something at CES next week that just feels so weird to me that we're not traveling. All right, now it is time for a message for our sponsor, and then stay tuned because after that, our guest is Paul Williams of GE Lighting. He's going to be talking about what the heck is the deal with Cync and all of the new devices that they plan to launch this year. It's pretty exciting. And now it's time to take a break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. As I mentioned at the top of the podcast, this week's sponsor is Calix, and I've been using Calix's Blast Wi-Fi 6 systems in my house for the past few months. I'm joined now by Pam Ferguson, who is VP of Product Marketing at Calix. And to mix things up, she has some questions for me. Welcome, Pam.
Thanks, Stacy. Happy New Year to you, Kevin, and all of your listeners. To kick this off, would love you to share some highlights of your experience with your Calix Blast Wi-Fi 6 system.
So overall, I was very pleased with the experience. First of all, I did find it very easy to set up. I downloaded the Command IQ mobile app, and I was able to get it up and running really quickly. The first thing I did was use the Command IQ app to change my network name and password because I didn't want to have to reset all of the devices in my home. And I liked that I could see all of the devices that are connected to the network in that app. I feel that that's a really crucial point of any modern Wi-Fi system. I also like that I get notifications whenever a new device connects. I am constantly adding new devices to my home network. And sometimes I'm not always sure if they connected because sometimes the device apps can be a little slow. But now I know. The other thing that I really benefited from in having your Blast Wi-Fi system was that it eliminated the dead spot that I used to have in my office. I've tried several options, including rearranging my previous mesh network, and the Calix Blast system was the first one that actually eliminated the dead spot.
That's so great to hear. Did you get a chance to download any of our additional applications?
I did get a chance to play with some of the other applications available. I started with the parental control features, and I created a profile very easily for my daughter. From there, I set up a few filters. I put Safe Search on for Google, and I did a YouTube restriction, which seems to have worked. I didn't set up time limits because so far she doesn't need them, but I appreciated that it was available. I also liked the ability to prioritize the devices that I have in my home. So I set it up so my laptop has priority over my daughter's computer, which I know Zoom school is important, but when I'm doing an event online, I think my event is a little bit more important. A final thing that I really liked, maybe just because I'm a super nerd, is that I got to see the network usage of all of my devices, both on the download and the upload side. All in, I found the Calix Blast system easy to use and able to provide me with a lot of control and information about my network that I appreciate having.
Glad to hear that you had such a great experience, Stacy. And I couldn't agree more on the types of services ISPs should be delivering to their subscribers. If your listeners want to eliminate their dead spots and have a similar awesome experience, they should call their ISP and ask why they're not using Calix Blast Wi-Fi systems. They can also visit blastwifi.com to find out more.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacy Higginbotham, and today's guest is Paul Williams, who is GM of Product Management and Growth for GE Lighting, which is now a Savant company. Hi, Paul. How are you doing today?
Hi, Stacy. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the show.
Man, I am really excited because all the way back in July, Savant acquired GE Lighting. And Savant has been low-key one of my favorite professional smart home installation companies for probably almost like 10 years. So when Savant acquired GE Lighting, I was like, ooh, they might finally be coming to like the DIY set, the peons like myself who cannot afford the fancy integrations. So this was super exciting. And we're having you on the show because y'all are about to make a big splash at CES with lots of news. let's run down the three big news items, and then we're going to take them apart. So, Paul, you want to start with your three big news items?
You bet. So for the last almost 3 years, we've been shipping products into the smart home environment from GE Lighting. And those have been branded C by GE, and the C standard for connected. We felt like it was time for a brand change, something that more connected to consumers for them to be able to understand, but also easier to say and maybe roll off the tongue a little easier. So we're changing it to Cync. We're still using the C that we had along with YNC, so a little play on the word Cync. And we feel that gives us a better way to communicate to consumers this ability to sync your life, sync your lifestyle, sync your home, sync your lights, sync other things as we're heading into the greater smart home this year as well. So that was first piece of news. So new brand name that will start to roll out first part of next year. We also have a brand new app. And as you mentioned, Stacy, we were acquired by Savant middle of the year. Savant is a professionally installed smart home solution, been around for about 15 years. Great user interfaces, ability to have simple interfaces for consumers to use, but professionally installed. And with the acquisition of GE Lighting, as you had thought and hoped, we're taking that environment into the normal residential and retail smart home environment. And so we have a brand new app that's coming out, kind of the best of both worlds. We're taking all of the beautiful interfaces and personalization that Savant has put into the app, along with our learnings for the last 3 years of having to have normal customers try to install products, bring them online, and then use those products. We're bringing both those things together in what we believe is really a fantastic experience for consumers. All right. And also this year, we have 3 new products that we're announcing that are coming out the first part of this year. It starts with an outdoor plug, which allows us to control outdoor lighting, outdoor pools and pumps and those types of things that you would have there, water features. We also have an indoor smart camera and a fan speed switch that's an intelligent fan speed switch that rounds out our in-wall switch category products.
Wow. And one of those things is not like the other. So we're going to get to that in a minute, but that is a lot of information. We'll start with the new products because, man, we are a bunch of gadget heads here on the IoT podcast. So the outdoor plug, is that going to be Wi-Fi and Bluetooth?
It is. One of the approaches we've taken is to make our products have both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And Bluetooth for communication inside the home. And it's using a mesh, and that we found is the best way to communicate in the home with the least amount of latency, but also creates this great mesh experience that from the consumer is invisible, but from a capability perspective is very powerful. And then the Wi-Fi, which gives us that ability to fall back to the cloud if we need to, or voice control with Amazon or with Google as well. And so there's some ability that we've added to that plug.
Okay. The fan speed control, I want to ask you because your switches that y'all announced last year and I think are out kind of towards the middle of, well, they were out sometimes in 2020 because I picked up a few, but these switches had no neutral wire and they were one of the easiest things I've had to install. And I've been a big proponent of people like, hey, it's okay to install light switches. They're not as hard as you might think, as long as you turn off your power. So I was really excited to see that because, again, so easy. Are we going to see that going forward? Or are we going to see that on the fan switch? Is that even possible on a fan speed switch?
On the fan speed switch, we had hoped to have it as a 3-wire, but unfortunately, because of the physics involved there, it requires a neutral wire. So that's the one product that if you're in a house, you'll have to have a neutral wire for that fan speed switch to work correctly. But our dimmers and switches, as you mentioned, that came out earlier this year, a 3-wire version that allow you to go into pretty much any home in North America and replace the switch with one of our 3-wire switches.
And I have to ask, because having done this for so many years, why hasn't that been done before? What was the new thing that y'all learned that enabled that to happen?
So it's pretty hard. So what you need to be able to do is you've got to be able to power still from that circuit to be able to keep the radios in that product alive and the processor alive so that you can communicate with that device. And it's a pretty daunting task. There aren't very many that have been able to accomplish that today. And so our team took a unique look at it, spent a lot of time, quite honestly, trying to understand the problem, and then in trying to solve the problem, and came up with a unique way of being able to do that.
Awesome. I figured it was hard. But I figured with 130 years of lighting behind GE Lighting that it makes sense that you guys and Lutron has also sort of solved this too with some of their gear. So yay. Now, let's go crazy and talk about this brand new non-switch, non-light related device that you mentioned, an indoor camera. Can you talk about, well, one, why? And then two, what can we expect? Because this is a market that has a lot of products.
It is. Yeah. So that's a good question. And as we look at the smart home is bigger than just lighting. There are different categories in it that are important to consumers. And what we're really trying to do is to create a new environment. And I mentioned that we'll have a new app that's coming out. Well, that new app allows us the ability to be able to go beyond lighting, to be able to add other aspects of the smart home that are important to consumers. And safety and security is one of the biggest areas that's important. So that's the first area we're expanding into. You'll see others foreshadow a little bit without giving you too much detail on stuff that'll come even later in 2021. But that category is very important to consumers. It's something that really hits home with safety and security. You want to make sure that their home and the people in that home are safe and secure. We took an interesting viewpoint on this. We also did not want to come out with just the next 10th device that looks like everybody else's, does the same features, has the same benefits. We took a little bit different view here. And we said, what innovation can we add in this area? One of the areas, as we talk to consumers, is really around, especially around indoor cameras, it's going to be something that's inside of your home, is around privacy. So what we've done with this camera is add some unique features to it. First of all, the camera itself, there on the front of it, there's a lens, and you can flip it up, and it covers, or a piece of plastic that covers up the lens so that you're not getting any video to that lens, no matter what you want to do. It's akin to folks that you'll see running around with pieces of tape over their laptop camera. So by flipping this switch up, it not only covers the lens, and then you visually can see, because it has this orange reddish part that's underneath there, that it's in privacy mode. It also turns off audio to and from the camera. So you can put that in a room, and you can flip that switch up, and you can know for sure that your privacy is being maintained, because it can't go any further. It's physically being cut off. We've got electronic switches there cutting it off, which we think is a great way for you to be able to have that experience. You can also do it inside the app if you trust the app, and we'll tell you that in the app, we're for sure turning that off. When you turn off, put it in privacy mode, we're also turning off the camera and audio to and from the camera. But it doesn't stop there. One of the other concerns that consumers have is, where are those images being stored, especially something that's being generated from inside my house? And so we're giving the consumer options. The first thing that we've done is we put a micro SD card slot on the camera. And the customer can put their own SD card in there. That will allow them to record video to that device, and they can then pull it up later, see what happened, but it won't go into the cloud. It stays right there in the home. Now, for those folks that do want to store data in the cloud, we'll have an option, a subscription-based service that'll be available, as you would anticipate. That will be available for consumers to be able to subscribe to and store content in the cloud. And for those that want to make sure it's extra sure that it's being stored, they can store it both on an SD card and also in the cloud. So they have options for consumers. And we think this is a unique take on the camera experience for consumers.
Yeah, physical privacy on a device plus local storage has been a huge demanded item. And I have to ask, will this work if I am a Savant customer and I have a Savant system running on a Mac Mini somewhere, or I don't know if they're still running on Mac Minis, but if I have that in my house, can these devices be added into that system, or are they kind of separate worlds?
So right now they're separate worlds, but you'll see that world blend a little bit, being able to take some of these products into those professional spaces later on.
And this seems like a good time. Oh, wait, do we have pricing on this camera?
Yes, it's $69, $69.99.
Oh, that is a lovely price. Okay.
We also want to make it affordable and attainable. So
I like it. This gear works with Madam A, as we like to call her, which is Amazon's digital assistant, and then Google as well. Is it also HomeKit certified?
It is not HomeKit certified, and that's also something we'll be working on as we get later into 2021.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about something that might make that, I don't know if moot's the right word, but might help with that. So before we get to that, though, let's talk about the app, because this is where I thought Savant shined. I still remember walking into their showroom in New York City, and they showed me how in their app, you could basically take a picture of the lighting levels in the room it would tell you what lights were on and what they were set at, and it would just automatically create a scene for you from this. And I was like blown away. And this was like in 2013 or 2014. So way before, even before digital assistants were out there. So I would love to hear some of the features that y'all are bringing in the new app and when we can expect that app.
Yeah, you bet. So that feature that you were talking about is something called True Image. And True Image is the ability to take a picture of what your lights are in the room, and then what you see in the app as I change color or brightness of that light load is what's reflected in the app actually is what's happening in real life as well. It's a pretty cool feature. It's something that's been unique for Savant, and it is a feature that will be in our new app that will be available in the March timeframe. Along with that feature, a bunch of other things that we've done here is in the retail app experience. So if you look at what's available to normal consumers today, the IoT apps that are out there, as I pull them up, it's pretty much what you see is what you get. And the personalization and customization kind of starts and ends with being able to name things unique names. Like I can name the room Paul's room or this light Paul's light. And that's where it starts and ends. It's with text. Well, with Savant and with their ability to personalize, the consumer can take pictures of their room or pictures of their home or pictures of their devices and add that into the app. And that app then really truly becomes their app. It's not just an app by XYZ company that also has my personal names in it. It really truly becomes their app. It really is immersive into what is personalized around that consumer. Certainly they can choose from stock images that they want to have part of that, but they can also completely personalize it. And what we've also done is brought both of those worlds together, having Savant great rich user interfaces that you mentioned earlier, Stacy, along with our knowledge of having spent the last 3 years understanding how consumers install and then work with products that are installed in their home.
Okay. And let's talk about onboarding because, well, we should talk about onboarding and maintaining because onboarding is still difficult and maintaining in the smart light context, especially in the smart bulb context, is really tough. So one of my issues is I've moved around a lot in the last 3 years, bought a house, rented a house, then bought a new house. And so, futzing around with my lights, every time I move a lamp into a new room, I've got to reset everything, rediscover all my devices and my digital assistants. It just drives me bonkers. So I'm curious how you're making the process of getting devices online easier and then also adapting devices as people's lives change.
Yeah, you bet. Those are both good questions and something that we saw as well and we continue to see in the environment. What you'll see in this new app experience is we spent a lot of time thinking and working through that onboarding experience. We've done a lot of user testing. What you'll find is we've done a really good job of not overburdening the app because I also want to take somebody that's maybe not a neophyte. I don't want to bore them silly as they're going through 50 different screens trying to put this device on. They go, I already know how to do this. Why are you walking me through all these screens? But we're providing, I would say, really great context and experience for that consumer to understand, not just run through the steps, but why am I running through the steps? What is it going to benefit me? And why do I care what this is named right now? Or why do I care that this thing is located in this room? What's that going to mean for me later? And then when it comes to, as my life changes, one of the other unique things that we've done here, which is also one of the things you tend to see with these retail apps, is once again, it's what you see is what you get. I added one light bulb to my house. And because of the way that app may be structured, I have to go in and I have to open up the app, then I have to go into the room, then I maybe even have to go into a group, and then I can control that lamp. That one bulb, that was the only thing I have in my home. And I have to step through 3 different menus to get to that bulb. Well, what we've created and what you'll see in this new app is a dynamic home screen. And then if I have one device, when I open the app, that's the device I see, and I control it. I don't have to go in through some steps through rooms and other things. Then as my lifestyle changes, as I add more devices in or if I add more rooms, then I start to see those things exposed. As I add in different categories, if I only have lighting in my room, I'm not exposed to whole things of, how does safety and security, we talked about the camera, how does that get exposed? This app will evolve and revolve around how that consumer's life expands in their journey in the smart home. Because like you and like many other consumers, we don't typically go in and just I'm going to go from 0 to 100. I had nothing in my house that's smart home today, and I'm going to automate everything in one fell swoop. It usually happens really slowly. And this new app experience will evolve around that consumer and will expand accordingly.
I like it. So we've talked about your big news. Through that news, we've seen how Savant is going to integrate GE Lighting going forward. Are there any other things you want to tell us about the combination of the two companies that's relevant for people who care about the smart home?
You bet. I think what you're saying here, and one of the things that we saw as we were bringing GE Lighting into Savant, was this ability going forward of being able to take a consumer from the retail shelf all the way through professionally installed smart home systems and really being able to fill everywhere in between that. We finally have a company there, which I have felt needed to be there for a long time, that can walk across those lines, because everything that you see in the professional world are the features and benefits that consumers would like to have in that entry-level experience. And in the professional world, what you want is that ability to have access to all the products and solutions you need that can be professionally installed so that it's completely taken care of for me, white glove. And we have and will have product sets that allow us to expand across that entire spectrum, both from the retail shelf all the way up into professionally installed solutions. And you'll continue to see more of that as we get through 2021 and beyond.
So let's go into this next year with the smart home, because there are two kind of things that I think are really relevant. One is Project Connected Home over IP. And this is a standardization effort at the application layer by Amazon, Apple, Google, and Samsung. And like 140 other companies are working on this as well. And we expect a spec later on in January. And the idea here is it'll be easier to provision, manage, and hopefully secure connected devices in the home. So that's one thing that I think is going to be really helpful for consumers who are like, I'm really interested in this, but I'm also like, I don't know what works with what. And then two is the idea that there are so many big tech companies building these connected products, and it's becoming hard to see differentiation. So I look at Chip and I'm like, is that going to cut down on differentiation? Is it going to drive people to buy more devices? Are we going to see people buying only, we'll call it Cync branded devices from y'all? Given what feels like a potentially huge change in the smart home, what do y'all see happening, and how do you think the consumer is going to react?
The way the consumer will react is that Chip will probably mean very little to consumer, quite honestly, because it's this communication layer there. We're members of Chip. We're participating in the consortium here to go through and establish this standard and specification. And we think it's a worthy cause. For a long time, there's always been this, how do these devices all communicate with each other? And what it should do is it should make it easier to know that if I buy this device here and this device over here and this device here from 3 different manufacturers, that somewhere I'll be able to tie those things together with a lot more ease. And that's the promise of what Chip will offer. I still believe and continue to believe that consumers will be more inspired with what those use cases are and what the experiences that smart home can give them. It's not about this light bulb. It's about what can that light bulb do for me? Or what can this switch or this thermostat or this camera? What are the use cases that it exposes to me? And by adding more of those devices in, what other use cases do those then expose? Where Chip comes into play is having this interoperability that is really important for having those things all work together at a level that allows that to occur. I continue to believe you will still see secret sauce that all of these companies, including our own, are going to have for how those devices get exposed to consumers, and once again, those use cases and experiences, because those are the things that I believe are unique that these companies, including ourselves, will be providing to consumers. And so Chips, really, in my mind, is a great effort of making it simple for both manufacturers and consumers to know that, hey, I bought this product, it's going to work with these other products as well.
Got it. And that's probably why y'all are focused on such a good app experience come March. So, all right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Stacey, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.